Show started. And that music can only mean one thing. It's DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. Good morning to you, and welcome in across all of our video platforms, Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Twitch. And, of course, for those watching on the world-famous DawgNation.com there as well. We are ready for Georgia-Oregon. It's going to be a special day for Dog fans. I'm going to talk more about why that is coming up in a moment. We'll have John Stinchcomb stopping by today. We'll have a preview for the commitment decision tonight from Monroe Freeling. That's going to be a big deal. And it comes at a time in which Georgia, let's face it, really needs itself a big recruiting win. We'll have more thoughts on what else to expect here around week one in college football. One position group for Georgia in particular that I think is kind of being put on the spotlight here in terms of what they might be able to do this season. We're going to cover a lot of bases. Let me just take a couple of more comments here quickly from DawgNation.com, and we're going to do this really fast and kind of roll into the show after that. So a lot of folks having a good time here and getting ready for a big day for Georgia-Oregon on Saturday. So we're excited about all of that. Folks continue to chat and talk. And we had Scott Harris a moment ago talking about the Utah-Florida game coming up on Saturday. Obviously, you got Notre Dame, Ohio State. You got a lot of fun. Looks like Johnny Surfdog checking in here there as well to say Oregon's going to be fast on that carpet in Atlanta, but they can't handle the Dogs' power. I would agree with that. I think this is going to be a big day for Georgia on Saturday, and in some respects, it's an Oregon team traveling across the country, coming into the home state of the Dogs. We've heard Bo Nix, the presumed Oregon quarterback, say they're essentially treating this like a road game, even though it is a neutral site. They know it's going to be a preponderance of Georgia fans in the building there that day, and they know they're in store for a little bit of a house of horrors with that. Now, we saw Oregon win on the road last year at Ohio State, so they've certainly taken care of their business in hostile territory before. But to me, that tells you more about Ohio State than it tells you about Oregon necessarily. This ain't the same kind of Georgia team. This is a Georgia team that I think plays with a lot of steam there on Saturday. So let's get it starting. Let's get it started that way here today. This is the moment on Saturday that a lot of Georgia fans have been waiting a long time for. And I think you ought to savor it. I think you ought to enjoy it. And let's face it, I think Georgia fans may be a little tough to take there on Saturday as they make this a very, very hostile environment for these Oregon Ducks. We are kicking off game week. We could not be more excited. We've got big events, multiple big events here this week. We'll tell you all about that. Got even some more fun and surprises on the way there as well. There is no place I'd rather be than right here, right now, getting ready for DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. And it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, viewed to be the best.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Before we fully look ahead to everything in store for Georgia this Saturday against Oregon and the season that is to come after that, I want to briefly look back just for a moment, and I want to sort of appreciate a kind of a special moment from the national championship game that every now and then will just sort of be on my mind. And I think it's a reminder for us about what this upcoming Saturday is going to sort of feel like and sound like and look like. I'm so excited about everything we've got in store for you here this week, and there is a noise that I've been waiting a long time to hear once again. And coming up on this Saturday, we get a chance to hear that. And I think about this sometimes when I think back to that national championship game. You know, when Georgia was starting to assert itself kind of late in that game and you're getting some big yards on the ground, there was a running play in particular from Zamir White. And as the pile moved and as White churned and burned and got those yards, there was a noise echoing through Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis during that national championship game. And it was so loud it kind of overwhelmed the TV broadcast. And it was so loud that the play-by-play announcer, Chris Fowler, had no choice but to acknowledge what he was hearing in that moment in Indy. So before we get to Atlanta on Saturday and the Oregon Ducks coming in and all that is to take place here this weekend, can we look back just for a moment for that sort of special sound that we're going to be hearing a lot on Saturday? This from the TV broadcast back in January.
Against Jackson, and there's one against McKinstry. Back to White, who patiently navigates his way and continues to drive his legs and gets pushed by the pile. And the Dogs are barking. Their fans enjoyed that mosh pit.
You hear all that barking? I mean, you hear it. It's so loud coming through the broadcast. It's almost overwhelming, even the play-by-play voice of Chris Fowler right there. And Fowler just says the dogs are barking, and you can hear that sound just sort of echoing and reverberating through all that was Lucas Oil Stadium. And listen, we've all been a part of a lot of tailgates over the course of time. We've all had these moments in which we've seen Georgia fans get together. But there has never been a time in which Georgia fans have gotten together that's going to be like what it's going to be this Saturday. You think those dogs were barking in Indianapolis in the late stage of that national championship game back in January? How much barking you about to hear on Saturday? How many Georgia fans are going to greet each other one to the other with that loud bark? And when you look across the Home Depot backyard, we're going to be set up for the DawgNation Duck Hunt tailgate, or when we're at Marlowe's Tavern on Thursday night, how much barking is going to be taking place across all of this? I sort of get the impression that Georgia fans may be a little tough to take here for a little while, because Georgia has always been a great program and it's always had an amazing fan base. But the moment on Saturday is going to be so special, because this is, for the very first time, a chance for Georgia fans to get together for a tailgate, a chance to get together inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium after that, a chance to get ready to support their team, with now the full knowledge of the fact that you're the reigning national champion. And how cool is that going to be to see? I'm guessing a lot of Georgia fans will be wearing those national championship shirts when they show up in Atlanta on Saturday. I'm guessing when you look across those parking lots, including the one we're going to be in for our DawgNation Duck Hunt tailgate, I'm guessing when you look across the entire landscape, how many flags are going to be flying that say Georgia 2021 national champions? How much of that are you going to see on Saturday? And as I said before, how much of that dog barking are you going to hear echoing all across Atlanta as Georgia makes itself at home in Atlanta and makes things truly a house of horrors for Oregon on Saturday? And I was also thinking about this a little bit too. Think about the contrast here for a moment. I mean, think about what's in store here. Because when all those Georgia fans get together doing like they did in Indianapolis, when that barking is taking place in unison, it's deep, it's resonant, it has a lot of bass in it. It's a very sort of masculine sound. It's the kind of thing that opposing fans hate, but listen, they can't do anything to stop it here at the moment. And it is a total contrast to Georgia's opponent. And I don't know that anything sort of speaks to the difference between the two programs than the sounds the mascots make, because let's face it, Georgia is a barking dog from the SEC, the big bad behemoth of college football, the conference that always wins these kinds of early season non-conference matchups, setting the tone for the season, which we sort of normally know a SEC team is going to be reigning at the end as national champion. This is a spot that teams from this league have been in before, and now it's Georgia's turn to be in this spot as the reigning national champ, coming back for an encore the season after that, and you better believe there'll be plenty of barking going on because of that. And by contrast, what are the Ducks going to do? Are they going to quack? I mean, is that what we expect to hear from the Ducks on Saturday? Some quacking? You want to know the difference between these two teams, the sound you just heard from Georgia and Indianapolis, compared to the sound that we might typically hear from Oregon? I mean, is anybody going to be scared of a noise like this? I mean, is that scaring anybody? I mean, just and that's probably not that. That's fine. I mean, the comparison here is, I think, hard not to deny that when you hear the sounds of those barking dogs just echoing and billowing around Indianapolis, the kind of meager quack from Oregon, that sort of speaks to all of this. And of course, there's also that person that says, "Well, hold on now, BA. I know you're a Georgia fan, but don't get too confident here. Don't get too far ahead of yourself here on all of this." And listen, I get that. I get where you're coming from on that. There's been plenty of people here over the course of the offseason that have told you, Georgia's lost too much. There are 15 players that were drafted in the NFL. There were 5 guys off of the defense alone, drafted in the first round. That's too much to replace. And yeah, Georgia may have beaten Alabama a year ago, but there's seeming to be this kind of narrative that people try to put into shape of, well, that was just a fluke, and now Alabama's angry, and now you'll eventually apologize for the fact that you beat them because of how mad you made Alabama in response to that. And, oh yeah, now they're not injured or hurt anymore, or whatever that the thought's supposed to be, that somehow Georgia is some sort of one-hit wonder, some sort of program that that may have had its moment in the sun a year ago, but shouldn't expect much more than that. I can tell you this from having talked to a bunch of Georgia fans so far this summer. That may be what some folks believe about Georgia, but that is not what Georgia fans believe about their program, nor is it, I believe, what Georgia believes about itself. I'm going to write about this more at DawgNation.com at some point this week, that I think the big disconnect that exists here is that there are some people who sort of think that last year was kind of the end of a version of college football's history, that Georgia had waited 41 years to win a national championship, finally got one, and now the story was over. But I don't think that's quite the case. I don't think that what happened in 2021 with those barking dog fans in Indianapolis against Alabama, I don't think that was the end of a chapter of history so much so as it was the start of a new version of college football's history. In other words, for those of you that watch a lot of like binge watch TV shows, things like that, what happened against Alabama last year wasn't a series finale. It was a season premiere. It was the start of something new for Georgia, something that had been building for quite some time. And if you look at the last 20 years in college football, what do you see? Programs that win national championships usually win more than one. Now, they haven't all done that. Florida State didn't do that after the 2013 season. Auburn didn't do that after the 2010 season. Texas didn't do that after the 2005 season. So there are examples of sort of one-hit wonders. But does this Georgia team feel like one of those type of teams? One of those teams that got lucky because it had a Vince Young, or got lucky because it had a Jameis Winston, or got lucky because it had a, Cam Newton. And once you didn't have a player like that, all of a sudden you didn't have the same level of program anymore? Does Georgia feel like that to you? Doesn't feel like that to me, nor do I think it should feel like that to you. In fact, what occurred last season was the kind of thing that clues had been dropped about for many years prior to that Georgia was building itself towards what ultimately resulted in a championship season. In fact, to punctuate that idea even more, let me show you this for those of you watching on video on the screen from our friends at the Action Network. This is a gambling website. They cover point spreads, things like that. Not everybody likes betting, but think of this not so much as something to make money on, but just simply a projection from people who are willing to put their money where their mouth is, and how often Georgia has exceeded the expectations of gambling fans or gambling observers or actual gamblers. The Action Network says that since Kirby Smart was hired at Georgia in 2016, the Bulldogs are 47-34 against the spread. That means if you were to bet $100 in all those games, your profit over the course of that span would be $967. It says that makes Georgia the most profitable team against the spread in the SEC. In other words, Georgia has been doing better than expectations for quite some time under Kirby Smart. And last year was just the biggest example of that when it comes to winning the national championship. And because of all of that, we don't believe that last year was the end. We think that last year may have just been the start. So this Saturday against Oregon, you better believe we are pretty confident what Georgia's going to put together. We think it's going to be a big day for the Dogs, and we think it's going to be a big reminder that UGA actually has gotten kind of comfortable being at the top of the college football world, and they don't plan on stepping down from that spot anytime soon. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. And happy to have you with us no matter how you get to us today, live on video, 10 a.m., Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. We're on the radio at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref. We're available as a podcast wherever you find them, including the world-famous DawgNation.com. And just really happy to have you with us today across all of our platforms. Getting ready for DawgNation.com on Saturday. Getting ready for a huge event at Marlowe's coming up on Thursday with our good friend Jake Fromm. So all of this in store in the days to come. But for now, today's show would not be possible without our friends from Pella Window and Door of Georgia. Dogs will be making themselves at home at Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Saturday. You make yourself, though, at home in your home each and every day. And one of the things that makes that easier, better, more enjoyable are energy-efficient windows and doors, the kind of product that Pella Window and Door of Georgia is famous for. So if you haven't checked out yet what makes them great, now is the time to do that. Have a no-pressure consultation with one of the Pella experts. Let them talk you through the entire line of product, your installation options, and really, truly, what makes Pella better for you. Keeping the stuff on the inside of your house where it's supposed to be. I'm talking about that air conditioning that you pay so much for. Keeping the stuff on the outside where it's supposed to be. Properly fitted windows and doors. The high quality product that Pella is famous for. That means the bugs and the heat and all that kind of stuff. It's not getting into your house. It's staying there on the outside. That's what Pella Window and Door of Georgia is all about. Also, it can improve your curb appeal too, which could improve your resale value there as well. And you get great savings right now too, because between now And September 30th, you can get no payments, no interest for 12 months or 50% off all qualifying installations. So you can stop by and see them at the new Experience Center right there in Duluth, or you can find them online at pellaofga.com/DawgNation. That's pellaofga.com/DawgNation. You can also give them a call, 678-638-1496. That's 678-638-1496. Pella Window and Door of Georgia is viewed to be the best. We're looking forward to talking to John Stinchcomb here coming up in a couple of moments. Before that, though, I want to get ready to go around the doghouse, and it's assisted today by our friends at AAA. And obviously, when you start thinking about Georgia on the field here this season, there is, I think, some areas in which you say, well, Georgia's probably already strong, and there are some areas in which you think, hey, maybe Georgia has a chance to be stronger than they've been in the past. I want to focus in on one of those there for a moment, on the latter category, something where Georgia was maybe good a year ago, but has a chance this year to maybe be even better. I want to talk about the offensive line for a moment. And I thought it was interesting. Pro Football Focus the other day in ranking all the best offensive lines in college football. Now, the caveat to all of this is always not everybody kind of looks at Pro Football Focus necessarily as their cup of tea. But in talking about Georgia in particular, one of the things they said in ranking Georgia 8, I thought was pretty interesting. So let me show you this on the screen here for a moment. This is Pro Football Focus kind of explaining why they have Georgia as their number 8 offensive line. The writer says that Georgia's offensive line has the potential to move up much higher on this list by the end of the season. Both Broderick Jones and Warren McClendon have made PFF's top 25 list, and one of only 4 tackle duos to do so. Cedric Von Prawn-Granger has a 76.7 pass blocking grade last season, 5th among SEC centers. I have no idea how they got that, but nonetheless, that's their number. They also say the guards are inexperienced, but Amarius Mims is a former top 10 recruit, and Tate Ratledge was a top 50 prospect coming out. Now, I don't think that Mims is going to be starting at guard, so if that's what PFF is suggesting, that may be why Kirby Smart and some of those folks don't always love what they bring to the table. But nonetheless, the overall, I think, opinion here is one that most Georgia fans would probably agree with. The Georgia's offensive line is at least very good right now. By the end of the season, it has a chance to be much better than that. And some of the intrigue here kind of centers around that kind of guard spot of, is Tate Ratledge truly healthy enough to play from the very beginning of the season? And what happens over on that left side of the guard position, where it seems like it's been Devin Willock, Xavier Truss kind of battling it out there in that spot here right now. If you're curious what the rest of the offensive lines look like, by the way, you've got Ohio State at number 1, you've got Notre Dame at number 2, USC at number 3, Baylor at number 4, Arkansas at number 5, BYU at number 6, A&M at number 7, and you get to Georgia at number 8, one spot ahead of Michigan at number 9. So that's kind of where Pro Football Focus currently rates the Georgia offensive line. And I guess I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I can't tell you all 5 guys starting for all those teams that are rated ahead of Georgia, so I can't tell you if these are accurate ratings or not. But it seems to match up with what my eyes have sort of told me about Georgia. I thought the Dogs' offensive line was pretty good a year ago, but probably not great. And when I look at Georgia this year, taking that next step offensively, I think being great is a reasonable possibility, and it's the kind of thing that ought to motivate UGA to be, as Pro Football Focus suggests, a much improved offensive line by the end of the season, and the kind of offensive line that's maybe reminiscent of some of the ones that Sam Pittman had back in 2017, 2018, when the UGA OL really was truly dominant. Now, the good news here is, and this is going back to spring practice here for a moment, but one of the key leaders for Georgia and one of the true sure things for this Georgia offensive line, the center, Cedric Von Prawn-Granger, who's already kind of speaking up as very much a vocal leader for this unit, says, hey, they do have a chip on their shoulder, and they are motivated. They do want to be the very best in college football. So for an analytics side to say that it's possible, for us to say that it probably needs to happen, the idea that's exactly the motivation that this unit seems to have based on the previous words of Van Pran and all this, hey, I take that as a really good thing. In fact, let me let you hear SVP going back to the spring.
I'll say this. We definitely want to honor the guys that came last year, but honestly, this is a new group, and we feel slighted because let me rephrase that, not slighted. Slighted is the right word. We just want to use it as motivation that we didn't win the Joe Moore last year, so we want to be the best group possible.
So listen, I like that. I think that's a really good thing. And I think when you talk about the Georgia offensive line from Cedric Von Prawn-Granger saying, going back to spring practice, of course, but saying that we want to win the Joe Moore Award. We want to be acknowledged as the best offensive line in the country. Well, where does that show up? It shows up in more big-time rushing plays. Last couple of years, Georgia, from a sort of running game standpoint, probably hasn't been quite as dominant as they were in the first couple of years of the Smart era, leading the SEC in rushing in 2017, leading the SEC in rushing in 2018. They haven't finished higher than 5th in the SEC in rushing in either of the last 3 years. I think that you can change that without becoming a run-first offense. Part of the reason why Georgia hasn't had quite as many rushing yards is they throw it now more than they used to. But you don't necessarily have to run it more to run it better. You can just simply get more yards when you do rush it. And an offensive line motivated to be as good as what Van Pran suggests that Georgia's motivated to be, that could be a very big sign and a good sign for Dog fans heading into the season. And one of those things I would suggest you ought to be watching for pretty closely against Oregon on Saturday. Oregon's front seven, pretty good, has been last few years. They're probably better defensively than maybe even think. Well, the Georgia offensive line gets a chance to show how good it is on Saturday against the Ducks, and I think that's one of the really fun storylines to watch as we get closer to Saturday. That is Around the Doghouse. It's assisted today by our friends at AAA, and we're happy to have them on board with us. We love them for legendary roadside assistance, but we also love them when we talk about home insurance there as well and getting your home insurance through AAA. And one of the incentives they have for you to get your home insurance through them is what they call their disappearing deductible. Now, here's how it works. They can reduce your deductible by $50 for every policy year that you go claim-free. That's up to $500. It's a great incentive for getting your home insurance through AAA, and it's just one of the many options they offer for you when it comes to home insurance opportunities. So check out AAA.com/home insurance. That's AAA.com/home insurance, or you can give them a call, 833-718-2075. The number, once again, 833-718-2075, and find out how AAA can step up to the plate for you here today. All right, good to have you here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia today. Before we're done, we're going to get a little bit deeper into UGA recruiting. It is decision day for the 4-star offensive lineman Monroe Freeling. DawgNation going to have coverage of that for you coming up later on tonight. And it is a big decision for UGA, both because of how pivotal Freeling is for this class, but also because of the time that it takes place. At one point in time, we thought that Freeling might be still several weeks away, if not months away, from making his announcement, but he's decided that he's ready to go here right now. So that could come at a time for UGA in which they need some good news recruiting, especially after Anthony Evans made the decision that he made on Friday, choosing Oklahoma over UGA. So we'll get deeper into the Freeling thing here before the show is done. We'll also talk to John Stinchcomb, some about that there as well, and more with John about, hey, what does it feel like to be the reigning national champs, playing your first game on Saturday with that designation next to your name. So let's have some fun with that right now. It is DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, and it's great to have the former All-American with us right now.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
We'll say hello to John Stinchcomb here. Great to have him on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia today. And, John, there's a lot I want to talk to you about. I want to begin, though, with the position that you know so well, something we were just reading a moment ago from Pro Football Focus, which is not everybody's cup of tea, and probably I don't even really know how they tabulate some of the stats they share as a part of their analysis, but let's just take them at their word for a moment. They have the Georgia offensive line rated 8th to begin the season. Now, I can't tell you all 5 starters for the 7 teams rated ahead of Georgia, but I do feel like, hey, 90th percentile, but not quite best overall, seems about right to me when it comes to Georgia. That I feel like this is a very good offensive line, but something I would say probably just short of maybe great a year ago. I think in the past, when we've talked about this, you've had a little bit more favorable assessment on that group, maybe from last season than I did. But nonetheless, what's your outlook for Georgia on the offensive line here right now? Against a pretty good Oregon front seven, it's a good measuring stick on Saturday. One of the examples of the game against the Ducks where I think that's true. But what's on your mind about the Georgia offensive line as we head into the start of the 2022 season?
5R, Georgia.
I'm sorry, John. Can you say that again? I didn't have your sound turned up. Can you say that one more time?
Sure. Could you you tell me with complete confidence who the starting 5 are at Georgia?
Well, that's a very important issue to get to before you know how well the group's going to play, because you don't know yet for sure how healthy Ratledge is, although he's certainly, saying all the right things for a healthy guy. And left guard seems to be a little bit of a mystery. So that's 40% of your offensive line right there that you might not can sort of speak on with certainty. So that may be one of the issues, to be sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I say that because I can't with certainty say who the 5 are going to be. You have to like the 7 or 8 names that are competing specifically at the guard spots and feel confident that wherever Georgia does land, that we have some very competent bodies that will fill those spaces. But it's these preseason rankings. They're fun to look at, and I think it gives you a gauge of where teams are. But so much in it is speculation. And for Georgia, they've got plenty of pieces from which they can draw from, and will need to. The Oregon defensive box, they've got some playmakers. They've got some linebackers that can make plays and are going to be challenged. I look forward to that matchup with Flo and Sewell going up against some of our tight ends. But what I think will really matter is, for Georgia, part of the identity is being able to run the ball.
Yeah.
And Oregon's front seven is going to be challenged mightily in this matchup of going up against a good offensive unit that returns so many veterans, and including Georgia's offensive line. So outside of guard, you have to feel really good about the tackle situation with Broderick and McClendon, and then Von Granger was a stud, especially who only got better last season as he had more reps. And so I feel really good about this matchup. I know Oregon's coming in hungry, and there's still some question marks as to who exactly will be facing and who will put out there. But golly, there's just so many good pieces for Georgia, specifically across this offensive line, that whichever 5 does take the field, and I would expect a rotation at some point, that it's going to be a really solid group.
Well, you touched on something I think is really important. The way in which I'm measuring the offensive line, because I'm not watching the film, I'm not grading the players. That's not, obviously what I'm doing around here. Part of my biggest evaluation of the Georgia offensive line is going to be how effective the rushing game is. And you look at the last 3 years for Georgia, John, Georgia hasn't been higher than 5th in the SEC in rushing in any of the last 3 years. And I think when I say something like this, there are some fans who say, well, that's good because I want Georgia to evolve into more of a passing team. I don't want this to be a run-first offense. And my response back to that would be, I think you can get more rushing yards without being a rush-first offense. In fact, let me just read this to you very quickly here. If you look at the top 3 teams in the SEC from a rushing yards per game standpoint a year ago, you see Arkansas, you see Mississippi, you see Tennessee. Now, folks think Sam Pittman in Arkansas, but the truth is that's Kendall Briles as your offensive coordinator. That's a very much kind of pass-first mind as an OC. That's certainly true for Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, and that's certainly true for Josh Heupel at Tennessee. The teams that actually ran the ball the best a year ago in the SEC were teams that kind of had a little bit of a pass-first mentality, which means that you don't necessarily have to stop throwing it to create rushing yards. If anything, the passing game helps set up the run. So I don't think that's I think that's a little bit of a false conversation to assume that Georgia has to be rush first to get more rushing yards. They just simply need to rush better, and I do put some of that on the offensive line fully asserting itself in order for that to happen. What do you think about that overall conversation of Georgia in the midst of a bit of an offensive evolution, but still needing to get plenty of rushing yards?
I think it's a balance, and I think that's what the best offenses are able to do, is threaten you in both the aerial attack and on the run game. And you just listed a number of teams that may not lead the conference even in attempts per game in rushing, but they're just so efficient and effective when they do it. With the evolution of the way offenses attack defenses and the way you spread out defenses and challenge them to not only protect in the box, but you've got them spread out where it's 53 across and as deep as you can go, trying to stretch the field. That's a lot of grass to cover. And when you create those opportunities, it lends itself to more space for your running back. So this isn't the old school, the team that puts 7, 8 in the box with just big mouth breathers that just pound on people. That's not rushing leaders anymore. That was 20 years ago, where you just, we're going to pound you into submission. You look at both college football and NFL, and the rushing teams that are most successful, they spread out the field, create gaps, and then can crease because the offensive line, has stops here and creates this space. And when they have running backs that, you make one guy miss, and because the field is so spread out, they can take it the distance, and you get more big plays that way. So it's recognizing how offenses are creating gains in the run game and seeing that it's different than it has been. So the old school mentality, and I think that's what fans picture sometimes. It's much different than reality today, and that the teams you just listed, they can spread it out and sling it. Mississippi, Ole Miss specifically, and that's what's creating these lanes and opportunities in the run game.
I want to talk about the Oregon game here for a moment, John, and I don't know if this is like a media thing or what, but like the thing that I just love is the spotlight that UGA finds itself in on Saturday. We talked before you joined us about, Georgia fans' excitement about seeing their team for the first time as reigning national champions playing a game, but also 3:30 start time for this game in Atlanta against a recognizable brand like Oregon. This is one of the biggest games of the opening weekend. I'm guessing there's going to be a huge television audience for this, and there's going to be a lot of attention paid to how this game plays out. There are some people who I think kind of hope that, hey, maybe Oregon can keep it close to the UGA, maybe suggest that there's a little bit more mystery and intrigue to the upcoming season. Obviously, Georgia fans want the opposite of that to occur. They want to flex a little bit in their first game as national champions. But everything about this just feels really big. It's a huge tailgate for us here at DawgNation, but also for UGA fans kind of leading into this. It's this mammoth NFL stadium that has all the kind of the shiny bells and whistles and things like that. Just the level of relevance that Georgia's going to have at its disposal on Saturday, and the level of earned media that you get from kind of playing in a spot like this. I just find this to be so exciting, and the sense that I get is that Georgia fans are so ready to get this thing going.
Yeah, and there are national storylines surrounding this game and implications from it that can reverberate across all of college football, because if Oregon's able to stay close, even not even win, but what that might mean to the various conferences and the implications that has of, hey, Oregon, who did win 10 games last year, but got smoked at the back end of that season when they went up against good competition. Is there more to it? Is there more parity? Because Lord knows every other conference wants it. Now that there's two power conferences, if you can say, hey, maybe the separation isn't quite as wide as it's perceived, that could be really, that would be a storyline that we're going to be discussing all year long. And then the flip side is, where's Georgia at, having lost 28 players, 15 of which went to the NFL draft? And are they really as deep as we think they are? And what are those national implications? Because it seems like the rich continue to stay rich, if you will, in the recruiting battles. So I think there is a lot of national interest in this game, and rightfully so. I think you can justify a number of different reasons as to why not only are Georgia faithful going to be watching this game, but folks across the country can see that this is a real tone setter at a week one, and what might be some of the major storylines that we're going to be talking about all year long.
You're a more measured person than I am, John. You're sometimes maybe more level-headed. So the opinion I've expressed over and over again is this is reigning national champs against rookie head coach coaching his first game. This is SEC versus Pac-12. This is a team traveling 2,500 miles, whatever it is, to come play in the home state of their opponent. John, nothing about this game is supposed to be close to me. This is supposed to be a dominant Georgia victory on Saturday. And as you said, if it's not, then maybe you're left scratching your head there a little bit. But coaches and players are supposed to respect their opponent. I'm sure UGA does. I'm just a blowhard with a microphone. I can say what I really think. I don't think Oregon has a shot of keeping it close against Georgia on Saturday. Do you agree with that?
Well, I hope it plays out exactly how you see it and how I can see it going. But you come in with a team that does have some returning pieces. They've added a guy who's familiar with Georgia's operations and head coach Dan Lanning, and even possibly their quarterback in Bo Nix, who didn't have great success against Georgia. But
I started to say that laugh is very telling when it's Bo Nix. That little chuckle that comes on the end of the Nix name there. That's a very telling laugh.
Well, only there's a couple decent offensive linemen in Oregon, but Bo was under duress that entire last game. I think I was running for his life. So I think he was going out there thinking that, hey, maybe I can get away from these defenses in the SEC, and out of week one, you're going right back into the lion's den, if you will. So can I see it playing out the way that you expect it? Absolutely. But I do think that, if Georgia, if it takes them time offensively to get up to speed, I don't know why it would, considering how many pieces are returning. But if you give a hungry team a little hope, if you give them a little, hey, maybe we can, a little faith in what their coaches have told them, and they're getting the message of it's us against the world, and there's everyone has counted us out. There's zero expectations for us to do anything, and what better place for us to be if we're dangerous? That we can just let it all hang out and go out there and shock the world. And sometimes that's liberating, that you don't play as stressed. But I'll also say it's pretty devastating if the other team jumps out early and you go, man, we are not ready. So
yeah.
I think that first quarter, that first half can really be predeterminant as to how the game goes. You give a hungry team some hope, and you have to battle more than you should, but you come out and play the way you should, and it can certainly snowball pretty quickly.
It is a big night tonight for UGA recruiting, John. I want to find out more from you in a moment about the player that Georgia has a chance to add. I'm curious your thoughts there on that. Before that, though, let me quickly remind folks about why this is such a big week for us here at DawgNation. We've talked a lot about the DawgNation Duck Hunt tailgate. That's obviously coming up this upcoming Saturday, but we have another big event there as well. How about the Marlowe's Tavern in Dunwoody this upcoming Thursday for an incredible event on hand there for that? It's our season kickoff preview event at Marlowe's in Dunwoody, and it's going to be a great time. Obviously, the entire DawgNation team going to be on hand, but former Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm going to be there as well. We are so excited about hanging out with Jake. This is going to be a great time. Our friends from the Finish Long Drink are going to be on hand there as well. It's always a good time when the long drink is flowing, and this week it is going to be. And I've even been told there is a chance that we might have some DawgNation Duck Hunt T-shirts to give away there as well. So for those of you who maybe were not able to get tickets for the DawgNation Duck Hunt tailgate, but you'd still like to have a DawgNation Duck Hunt T-shirt, I can't believe this, but I'm told that we may have a chance to give some of those away on Thursday there too. And for those of you that know the Marlowe's in Dunwoody, there's also a beautiful lawn out in front, so we're gonna maybe, weather permitting, be able to do our event kind of outside on the lawn there too. Now you don't have to bring your own chairs. We'll have chairs and things like that for you, but we're gonna set that up maybe outside and have a great event on the lawn, kind of like our own sort of pre-tailgate to the actual tailgate that's going to take place on Saturday. So you can go to DawgNation.com and get more details on this. But great event taking place on Thursday with DawgNation and former Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm at the Marlowe's in Dunwoody. That's 1317 Dunwoody Village Parkway. Starts at 6. You can enjoy some Finish Long drink. You might get yourself a DawgNation Duck Hunt T-shirt. So it's big doings coming up on Thursday at the Marlowe's in Dunwoody. And John, it's also big doings for UGA tonight when it comes to recruiting. Monroe Freeling is a big offensive line prospect, and I would say one of the biggest names that Georgia still has a chance to add here for this 2023 class. He's going to choose tonight between Georgia and Clemson and Miami and Florida and Alabama. It's sort of thought to be a Georgia-Miami battle here to a degree, but I know you've had a chance to see Freeling a little bit. What do you think about him, and why do you think it is that he kind of stands out right now as a little bit of a prospect of note here? As an offensive lineman yourself, what is there to like about Monroe Freeling?
Well, one, he's just that's a big body. I mean, he's all of 6'7". At least it looks that way on film. He plays long. He's one, it became evident that Georgia's really in the hunt. You watch more of his film, and for a high school player, he uses his hands pretty well, and that's kind of a rarity. Now, athletic guy for his size, technique will come, power will come. You look at his frame and see that there's ample opportunity. Once he gets to college and you're able to stack on more muscle, he's only going to be more powerful in various ways. But he loves to finish. He's a guy that plays with that kind of tenacity that's hard to coach. So you look at him and you say, man, there's so many aspects of his game that you just can't coach, that he already has a really strong grasp of, and what he can improve on is all stuff that he can improve on, that you can coach, and you can build more muscle on him. I mean, once he gets into a college system, that's what they do. They're going to teach him technique, and they're going to get him in the weight room. So I think he's a really good top prospect, and it would be a huge get. I know with the Bo Hewley, we discussed him a few weeks ago with, is there some trepidation as to there might be some movement there. This could be a really big win for Stacy Searles and that entire offensive line room, just building confidence in, recruiting in this position group is still at a premium, and Georgia has that on lock.
No, I think that's exactly right. So, John, the next time you and I talk, hopefully we're talking about what Georgia did to add Freeling to the mix, the class of 2023. Hopefully we are talking about a big win for the Dogs against Oregon and a great start to the 2022 season there on the field. So our long wait for the season is now over. It is here. I know you're excited with the game much like I am. So enjoy it here this weekend, John. I look forward to talking to you in the aftermath of all of this here again next week.
I can't wait. Go Dogs.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
It's always nice to have kind of like your signature sign-off, and John always gives us a Go Dogs every time he joins us. I always appreciate that. I always very much enjoy that indeed. And I thought what John had to say about Freeling there was also really good, too. We're going to have more thoughts on that decision tonight coming up, and specifically one of the things we're going to get into is how that kind of fits into the aftermath of the Anthony Evans decision on Friday, Evans choosing Oklahoma over UGA. So the fact that you get a chance to win with a guy like Freeling tonight, I think comes at a good time with some UGA fans kind of reeling about the current state of this 2023 recruiting class. And I think opinions vary about how fair or not that is in light of the bigger picture here. But we'll get into more of that before we're done on the program. But before that, let's go cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. Man. So excited about Royal Caribbean, and we got some really cool things to tell you about Royal Caribbean here coming up very soon. I'm not supposed to be saying any of this, but I am very excited about a lot of it. Y'all, we've got so many gigantic announcements in the next few days. I'm going to make one tomorrow, which I'm really excited about. We're going to make some more here later on the week to be excited about. And, of course, this going along with, all the other cool stuff that's on board there as well. What a time it is to be around DawgNation, and why not do that when you got a show like this talking about the reigning national champs getting back to the business of football here this week? How could you not be excited about all of that? So we've got big events and exciting opportunities commensurate, which is a bigger word than I should be using, but big events and big opportunities commensurate with a national championship type program that we talk about here each and every day. So just cannot get too excited about any of this and can't wait for it. And by the way, I'm also excited about Royal Caribbean because Away from college football, that's about the thing I probably get about as excited about as anything. Being on a wonderful Royal Caribbean cruise ship, going to some gorgeous location in the Bahamas or somewhere in the Caribbean, perfect day Coke, okay, or just enjoying the stuff that's happening on board. I love doing that too. I wish I was on a Royal Caribbean cruise here right now. In fact, somebody had sent me a message this weekend of themselves enjoying their own Royal Caribbean cruise vacation, perfect blue water, and I was so jealous that I'll probably show this to you later on this week as a golden shoe or something, but y'all share with me when you're on a great Royal Caribbean vacation, and it makes me wish I was on one right now. So two things I stay pretty excited about all the time. That's Georgia football and Royal Caribbean cruises, and so glad to have both those things in my life right now. And if you want a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation in your life, our friend Jessica Slater can help you out with that. She's the one we recommend for your Royal Caribbean travel needs. And trust me, you need a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation, whether you know it or not. So you can reach out to her. Give her a call, 770-718-9147. That's 770-718-9147. You can also find her online, dreamvacations.com/jslater. That's dreamvacations.com/jslater. She can hook you up the same way she's hooked me up. I've got 2 Royal Caribbean cruises already in the books. May have another one coming up here really soon, which I think is really cool there as well. So your time is now. Take your Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. Let Jessica help you out with all of that. 770-718-9147 or dreamvacations.com/jslater. All right, let's talk some SEC here for a moment. And it was a very weird thing on Friday that as the rest of the SEC is just kind of biding its time and getting ready for the start of the upcoming season, everybody's just sort of in a relaxed kind of low-key mood heading into the week 1, which is on its way next Saturday, except at Auburn. Auburn uses that as their moment to move off their athletic director. And Alan Green had his contract coming to an end. He wanted some resolution. So their resolution is, well, why don't we just move on? So Auburn essentially fired its athletic director a week before the season began. Like, that's as Auburn as it's ever going to get right there. That is as Auburn soap opera, Auburn drama as it's ever going to get. Can we bring the music down maybe just like a tiny little bit? That's about as Auburn as it gets right there. That, you kind of move off of Alan Green. And, I don't really know what all this means. I don't know that Green was a great AD. I did see where Danny White, the Tennessee athletic director, kind of basically said, good for you for getting out of that situation. First of all, we have a lot of public beefing going on in the SEC now in a way we haven't had before. A guy like White publicly calling out Auburn's a little bit of a weird scenario, but I think it sort of speaks to just how weird the scenario is behind the scenes there at Auburn. They can't seem to do anything to cure the drama that just sort of plagues the program. They just can't. And if you're a UGA fan, you love it because Auburn's one of your hated rivals, and they just never stop being Auburn, which in a way is kind of funny, I guess. And obviously a lot of this sort of points to the future of Brian Harsin there too. I mean, Harsin's already hanging on by a string. You've got boosters making up rumors about him as a way of kind of getting him fired. Green did very little to slow any of that down. But ultimately, with Green being gone, there's very little cover left for Harsin whatsoever. So, the idea that he's kind of a two-and-done type coach at Auburn, one more sort of lame duck year before the Auburn boosters get what they want, which is pushing him out the door. The dismissal of Green as athletic director, the move from Green away from the Auburn program, I think would speak to that as a pretty big possibility here. So turmoil at Auburn, athletic director out, future for Brian Harsin more uncertain than ever with that new job coming open here. And as we said before, Auburn just keeps right on being Auburn, which is kind of funny to watch. Now, speaking of Auburn, they are also one of these SEC teams that seems to have resolved its quarterback competition here for a moment. Now, as I told you, I love kind of picking on Auburn. I love the fact that they're kind of a drama farm. I like all of that. But for a second here, I'm going to try to be as objective as I can possibly be, which is maybe not the easiest thing for me, but I'm going to try to be objective because this is serious. It relates to gambling and things like that. Auburn named TJ Finley at starting quarterback. And as genuinely honest as I think I can be, I don't think that's a good sign. It seems pretty obvious, and this is one of those things we told you, that there are 4 teams in the SEC with relatively high talent levels with relatively uncertain quarterback situations. One of those was Florida, relatively high talent level, and in the case of Anthony Richardson, its starting quarterback, you know who the quarterback's going to be, you just don't know how good he's going to be. But other situations like Auburn and Texas A&M and LSU, we haven't known who that quarterback is. But what we have said is that if you put a good quarterback on one of those rosters, then you've got a team that's probably pretty dangerous. And the toughest case to be made would be for Auburn, but I would say even for Auburn, that good quarterback on that roster is a pretty dangerous team. But the fact that Zach Calzada didn't win the quarterback job, I think speaks to this being a lackluster quarterback situation. All of a sudden now you think about Auburn, whose season win total is somewhere around 5.5 or 6. I would say that Auburn becomes a team that I would take a long look on an under on. I think Auburn's going to have a very hard time winning SEC games with TJ Finley as its starting quarterback. And I think Zach Calzada was given every chance to try to win this job, and he just simply failed to do it. So you have to start somebody at quarterback, so Finley almost becomes that guy by default a little bit. Now, my guess is you're going to hear some whispers coming out of Auburn, well, actually, TJ Finley's really pretty good, and blah, blah, blah. All of that's just smokescreen. And by the way, we said the same thing about Georgia back in 2020 when Jamie Newman was supposed to be the starting quarterback and then he opted out, and then suddenly you magically started hearing all this great stuff about DeJuan Mathis. You didn't hear any of that prior to Newman opting out. So the fact that magically all of this praise for Mathis came right after Georgia sort of needed him to be starting quarterback, to me, sort of spoke to a PR campaign more so than anything else. So watch to see if the same PR campaign doesn't happen for TJ Finley here right now. But if Finley was going to be their guy, they could have made him the guy at any point in time. They wanted someone else to win the job. They wanted it to be Calzada, and you get a sense that Calzada may have actually finished third. They actually may like Robbie Ashford, another transfer quarterback. They may like him even more than they like Zach Calzada. It seems like Calzada is just a high-profile failure transferring into the Auburn program and doing nothing with the opportunity that he was given. Now, another starting quarterback that was named here, at least I think reportedly and then since then confirmed, is that Haynes King is going to be the starting quarterback at Texas A&M. Another transfer who did not win the starting job. Max Johnson left LSU to go to Texas A&M and did not get the job. Now, who's to say this quarterback competition might not continue into the season? I'm sure Jimbo Fisher is going to try to certainly act like it's going to because they don't want Johnson to transfer again. But this is a guy in King who would have been the starter a year ago had he not gotten hurt. He did get hurt, missed the rest of the season. That's how Zach Calzada actually emerged at Texas A&M. And so who knows? Maybe King really is a good quarterback. I honestly don't know the answer to this one way or another. But what's interesting to me about the Texas A&M situation is you got a guy in Johnson, high-profile transfer, like Calzada, like Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. There are a lot of big-time transfers who were leaving to go somewhere else for their big moment, and a lot of these guys are not going to end up starting. Max Johnson maybe being one of the more high-profile examples of that. Then you got the LSU situation where it seems like it's pretty likely that Jaden Daniels, the Arizona State transfer, is going to end up being that guy for LSU. I don't know. Maybe he's had a pretty good summer. Maybe he kind of has, but I think one of the big takeaways for me is that the team I'd be the most concerned with at quarterback is probably Auburn. The situation with Daniels at LSU may be the most favorable. The situation at A&M may be somewhere in between all of that. But we've been saying for a while now, these teams that have some talent but no quarterback, how they resolve their quarterback situation would be pretty interesting. And as it's kind of working out, I think you're left to try to conclude what that means for some of these teams on the field here this fall, and we'll learn some of this here pretty quickly. One more note from week 0. How impressive was Vanderbilt going to Hawaii and winning, 63-10, whatever it was? We told you about this, and we said, hey, for some of y'all who've kind of heard over the years, Hawaii's an underdog at home, sort of blindly bet the bows on that, Rainbow Warriors. We said this is not that kind of Hawaii team. We told you this was going to be a good spot for Vanderbilt, and it was. We actually did pretty well with our week 0 picks. We gave you Illinois. They were an easy winner. We talked about Vanderbilt here, there on that. So we did pretty well with the week 0 games that we took a position on. So big performance there from Vanderbilt. They got a chance in some non-conference games here in September to win some. And they probably need to win some of these non-conference games because once conference play begins, they're probably not going to be in too good a shape. But nonetheless, a nice performance for Vanderbilt over the weekend there in Hawaii, very late on a Saturday night. And, of course, all of this leads you into week 1 action. We'll do more of this as the week goes on, but here are the games worth noting. Obviously, Georgia, Oregon, you know about that. Arkansas, Cincinnati. This is one of the rare top 25 matchups. I think there are only 3 top 25 matchups on Saturday, Georgia, Oregon being one, Cincinnati, Arkansas being one, and also Notre Dame, Ohio State. So you got 3 top 25 matchups. I think Utah, Florida is a very interesting game. As much as it pains me to admit, I think you do have to watch out for Florida here just a bit. I could see a lot of point spread movement in the direction of Florida before that game kicks off. And then on Sunday, you've got Florida State, LSU. So you've got a pretty nice week 1 slate kind of stretching into the weekend too, with the big game on Sunday, and then you even got Tech and Clemson coming up on Monday, if you care to see that one. I guess the most interesting thing about that is, what's Tech lost its last 2 games by, like 100-0 combined score or something like that. So just seeing if Tech's going to score may be worth tuning in on a Monday night for Tech and Clemson. But nonetheless, we'll make that cruising around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, I want to talk some UGA recruiting here for a moment. And look, tonight is a big announcement. 4-star offensive lineman Monroe Freeling. We've told you about this. He's getting ready to choose. He's going to have a few hats on the table, so to speak, but it's probably a Georgia-Miami battle. This is a big decision in a number of fronts. It's one of the big measuring sticks for Stacy Searles as he begins his career as Georgia's offensive line coach. We're returning back to UGA, having been here years before. This is also just a big sort of need for UGA right now, that kind of elite offensive lineman. And it also comes on the heels as well of some pretty disappointing news for Georgia as of late in recruiting. And some of these have been surprises. I think the Anthony Evans thing on Friday was a pretty big surprise. I think the folks who were watching that wide receiver from Converse, Texas decision closely thought it was going to be Georgia. And then the last minute, it kind of wasn't. And it seems like we've had a few of these here lately for Georgia where it seems like it's going to be a Georgia win. At the last minute, things just sort of changed and all of that. And I've brought this up with Jeff on each of the last 2 Fridays when we've had our conversation with him. It's like you have these sort of like, extreme opinions on the part of some Georgia fans where Georgia fans in some respects are kind of worried about UGA recruiting, and they think those who are not are kind of naive. On the flip side of that, you've got some who think that Georgia recruiting is just going to be fine like it always is, and they think that the ones who are worried about it are paranoid. And you have like sort of this battle of, or are Georgia fans naive about this, or are they paranoid about this? And maybe like a lot of things, the truth being somewhat in the middle. There is no doubt that the 2023 recruiting cycle is a very strange one. There's no doubt about that. And there's also no doubt that the presence of NIL seems to be the one thing that's making it so strange. And there are some people who are like, well, Georgia's just not playing the NIL game. That's why it's not winning some of these recruiting battles. But honestly, I think that's a very much oversimplified statement. I do. I mean, I have reason to believe that Georgia is out there kind of playing the NIL game as much as a lot of other programs are. Maybe not as much as the sort of most famous NIL programs are, but certainly maybe as much as any group kind of just below that when it comes to the overall NIL game. In fact, this is where like the Freeling thing may be an interesting litmus test in all of this, because who is the other team besides Georgia thought to be in the mix for all of this? Well, it's Miami. And maybe for this 2023 cycle, nobody's sort of more NIL than Miami has been. So for the people who say that Georgia's not winning recruiting battles because of NIL, well, if Georgia wins against Miami for Monroe Freeling, like it did with Janelle Aguero not too long ago, then you can't fully say that, right? I mean, NIL can't be the reason why you're not getting players, and then all of a sudden when you do get a player going against kind of an NIL program like Miami, you sort of have to acknowledge that, well, maybe the NIL stuff is not the end-all, be-all for all of this, just given the way that all these decisions are working out. I think there's potentially a lot kind of going on here. And I do think it's worth noting. I do think this is kind of an odd cycle, and it's an odd cycle that at times sort of worked against UGA. The Freeling announcement tonight would make you feel better about all of that. And at some point in time, when we have more time, maybe we get into more detail about what else I think is going on here. But like one of the things that you might need to do as a response to all this, maybe at some point Georgia needs to draw a little smaller circle and start recruiting a little closer to home in some respects. That might help, I think, with some of the decisions that are being made here. I think you see a little bit of a pattern there of guys making decisions to go places that's maybe a little closer to their home, or a little bit more, I guess, convenient to that home front. But ultimately, that's one of those conversations to be had in greater detail a little bit later on. The point is there are some restless Georgia fans right now when it comes to the state of this 2023 recruiting class. And I sort of understand where they're coming from on some of that. Maybe it's not all as dire as has been suggested, but it's also not as rosy as some have suggested either. There are some unique challenges here to this 2023 class. But every Georgia fan would feel certainly better tonight if later on this evening you see the big 4-star offensive lineman Monroe Freeling making an announcement for the Dogs. We'll have live coverage for you tonight on that, DawgNation video channels, and we're looking forward to seeing that announcement when it plays out. And for now, we'll get ready to wrap up the program. And as we do, we'll do so with our golden shoe. And always fun to be able to do this. And we mentioned before that on Saturday, Georgia gets to play for the first time as reigning national champs. And a lot of Georgia fans enjoy that national championship gear they've got. As a reminder of that, including the Coca-Cola bottles that are such a popular collectible and have been for more than 40 years. Well, our buddy Hayes Calloway goes shopping and he says, listen, I bought a whole case of Georgia National Championship Coke bottles. So you love to be able to see that. He's got the entire case of Coke bottles, and he's enjoying himself there on that. So congratulations to Hayes for picking up a bunch of those, and we'll make you our golden shoe winner for today after all of that. How about our Gatorade updater? Long national title drought for those lousy, stinking Gators. They have no Coke bottles to enjoy. About 4,981 days since they have won a national championship. And our Gatorade countdown, how about 61 days from right now? Georgia back in Jacksonville, beating up on Florida again. We'll make that your Gatorade countdown, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella, Window and Door of Georgia. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews cool down. Yeah, there's the duck quacking again. I mean, has a duck quacking ever scared anybody? That's not an intimidating sound. Now, the big barking dog barking in people's face, that's a lot more intimidating. But the quack, 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 nobody's intimidated by that. Nobody's intimidated by that. And on Saturday, I think these Duck fans may be in for a long, long day as UGA fans enjoy themselves in style, getting ready for this one. So, with that said, we'll pull up your comments, and we'll have a first and 15. All right, hold on. Let me try to do one thing at a time here. Let me get back into my computer so I can get your comments up and running, and then we'll have our R.S. Andrews cool down after that. There you go. So on YouTube first today, and then we'll get the other comment sections rolling here too. And hope you're all having a great day and having a good time and getting ready to go here for a big one. Harry Leggy says, amen forever. Harry, glad to have you on board here. Green Soldier coming out on Thursday. See, you know it's a big event when the big stars are coming out. Commenter extraordinaire Green Soldier going to be there. Also looking forward to maybe seeing us on Saturday there too. Foster Moss says Vanderbilt's got the highest powered offense in college football right now. I will say there's a website I go to called cfbstats.com. It's a really good statistical website. It's very easy to use. You can find anything you're looking for very, very quickly. And it's kind of funny when you look at a site like that right now, you see Vanderbilt in the top line of every single category. It's like, wow. You can tell we're week 0 because Vanderbilt's on top. It's kind of funny. Heath Williams says, can we start Carter to NYC? Hey, I like it. Maybe we will do that. We obviously had some fun last year with Jordan Davis there on that. Maybe we will get that one going for Jalen here a little bit later on this year. Jimbo Sliced Bread says the Ducks going to lay a big goose egg on Saturday. I like that, Jimbo. That's a nice play on words, too. There you go. That's me. The no points for you. I've called for the Georgia shutout on Saturday, so we'll see if that plays out. Jerry Dogfan says, if Stetson had the numbers for Heisman consideration, do you think based on being left out of the quarterback conversations, he would have a real chance? I think Stetson's still got a chance right now. And, I mean, here's the one thing you understand is that pushing aside whatever you may or may not think of Stetson Bennett, the fact of the matter is that for the most part, the Heisman Trophy ends up not really going to one of the odds-on favorites. If you look at sort of the top 5 favorites, certainly the number 1 overall favorite in any year, you can almost always scratch their name off the list. For whatever reason, the top favorites don't end up winning the Heisman Trophy. So the Heisman Trophy is going to come from that next group somehow, some way. And so if Georgia is a 12-0 team, which we believe they will be, if they're in the mix of the college football playoff again come December, we believe they will be, I would say, of course, the quarterback on that team is a Heisman Trophy candidate. And we've seen a lot of times over the years where just because of the position you play, the team that you play on, you have a chance to be a part of that. So if you're telling me the numbers are even as low as 100 to 1, in some cases they've been higher than that, I would say Stetson Bennett is worth a little bit of a small wager to be a part of the Heisman Trophy conversation. I do. And some are like, well, he's not any good. That's totally fine. You may end up being right about that. Right now we're talking about, likelihood of occurring relative to price it's going to cost you. And just because of the position that he plays, I think that he has a chance to be in the mix there on that. I mean, I'll go so far as to say this. I think that Jalen Carter is Georgia's best player. I believe that Jalen Carter has a chance to be the best player in the entire country. I've said before, I think that Carter could be Georgia's second consecutive number 1 overall draft pick. All of that's on the table for Jalen Carter. But if you were going to give me a gift right now of a ticket for either Carter or Bennett to win the Heisman Trophy, I'll take the ticket on Bennett more than the ticket on Carter. Carter's the better player, but the Heisman voters have no idea who Jalen Carter is. There's a reason why we had to sort of be so aggressive with the Jordan Davis thing a year ago. Some of you are like, BA, you're doing this so much. A, leaders are repeaters, and B, we had to do it that much to get the attention for it. And eventually, we got some CBS coverage for it. We got some ESPN coverage for it. Eventually, we kind of got some coverage for it. But the part of the reason why you have to repeat yourself so much and stuff like that is because a lot of these Heisman voters don't know up from down. They just don't. So you have to kind of tell them what's going on. So once again, Jalen Carter is Georgia's best player, but I think that Bennett is probably Georgia's best shot of winning the Heisman. I might rank Bowers ahead because I do think that Brock's potentially in line for an outstanding year, and I don't think tight end would hold him back on winning the award. But if it's the comparison between, say, like Bennett and Carter, Carter's the clear better player, but Bennett may be the better shot at the Heisman. Baggins and Friends says, when y'all going to come to Augusta? It's 150 miles to Dunwoody. Well, listen, we've been to Augusta before. We've never done a DawgNation event, but we've done like a thing in Augusta before. I love Augusta. We did a DawgNation Daily from the parking lot in front of the Masters a couple of years ago. So we at least did that. But maybe we'll be back in Augusta here sometime pretty soon. Maybe we will do that. Some of these comments, I'm never quite sure. Can I read this? You never know. Cody Birdsong says, what in the world would make Colin Cowherd put Texas in front of Georgia? So I don't know for sure, but like that thing that was on the internet the other day from Colin Cowherd was not real. Like the top 25 where he had like Georgia 15, that was like a fake thing. And I'll never understand like why the fake stuff is so frequently about Colin Cowherd, but a lot of it kind of is. I never understand that. Chase White says, are we blacking out the bands? I don't think so. I know the Spike Squad is kind of called for this, but Georgia's not wearing black. Now, the other day, like the equipment thing came out with like the black shoes, and that made people kind of excited about this. And I've been wrong before, but I'm pretty sure they've already announced they were wearing red. So I don't think like the Spike Squad wants the blackout. I think that's who's calling for it. And people kind of like them, so they'll do what they want to do, I guess. But the entirety of the crowd's not going to be in black. I just don't think there's any. It's not really moving in that direction. I'm not like anti-Spike Squad or anti-blackout or anything. I'm just talking about like as someone who's kind of observed the chatter around this. There has been some talk about it, but it's not. I mean, the team's not wearing black, and I don't think you see the majority of fans in black that day either. I mean, people are going to be wearing the national championship shirt they're going to be wearing. So whatever color the championship shirt is what Georgia fans going to be wearing. Jack Marino says, where did you see where they showed the new black cleats? Didn't the equipment account tweet that the other day? Didn't that happen? Maybe I'm wrong. Jonathan Aaron says, who leaves first, Collins, Frost, or Harsin? Boy, that's a good question. I don't think any of the three are coaching at their respective school next season. Tech probably can't afford to buy out Collins during the year. Could I see Auburn firing Harsin during the year? I probably could. And in the case of Frost, I think his buyout drops to $7.5 million on October 1st. So that's your guy that you can fire during the year. Now, they also may eventually win some games too. Eric Summers says, what am I going to wear to the game? I'm going to wear my red DawgNation shirt and my black pants. That's what I'm going to wear. And I'd be fine to participate in the blackout, but I don't really have a great black shirt to wear right now. Thankfully, I've lost some weight, so some of my other DawgNation clothes are a little bit big on me right now. So I've got a red shirt that fits, and so that's what I'm going to wear. Let's see what else. Surfer Boy 3000 says it would be perfect to come out with the white helmets against Oregon. What do we know? Oregon's going to have some flash uniforms on. Yeah, so this is one of those things where, like, I think people would love that, and there's been some chatter related to that. But my understanding is, unless they're just doing this as a huge surprise, I don't believe that Georgia owns a team set of those white uniforms. I don't think they do. Maybe they should, but I think this is sort of like the thing when you were a kid, you went to Six Flags, and you put on like the Western outfit for like the picture, and you had the gun in your hand, like the one, gal sort of dressed as the whatever. I sort of think that the white uniforms are kind of like that. They have like a little bit of a wardrobe closet with like a few of these like alternate uniforms, but I don't think they have 85 of those. Let's go. Brandon says, well, where will y'all be setting up on Saturday? Home Depot backyard right next to the stadium. DawgNation Duck Hunt tailgate. Looking forward to it. Green Soldier says the media narratives are unreal when it comes to the football awards. Tight end award, the best offensive line award, didn't go to the best either spot. Yeah, I don't think Georgia had the best offensive line last year. I don't. Now, I don't mean to be a wet blanket, but I don't think that Georgia had the best offensive line last year. Andrew Hughes says nobody knew we would wear black against Auburn. When they wore that, which was actually 2007 when Georgia did that, I think people pretty well expected it. Because what a lot of people don't remember is that Georgia had called for a blackout the previous year against Tennessee, and about half the fans participated. Now, Georgia also got dragged that day against Tennessee. But about half the fans were wearing black that day against the Vols. The following year, for that blackout game against Auburn, the entire stadium was like, I'm talking about black on black. Like, everybody was just all black, all across the board. It was perfect participation from almost everybody. I mean, if there was one person not participating, it was very easy to see them because everybody was in black. So while it was a cool reveal and, air quotes here, a surprise, the truth is most Georgia fans had a pretty good idea that Georgia was going to wear the black jerseys that day. And I think the fact they got so much participation is a little bit of a tip-off to that. Let's get some Facebook comments here for a moment. Actually, let me go to DawgNation.com first, get some comments over there. Randy Hall says, totally disappointed in the non-commitment of Anthony Evans. He was doing commitment videos to UGA prior to his commitment to Oklahoma. I mean, I can tell you that, my understanding of this is that's a guy that, was coming to Georgia. And then the last minute he kind of wasn't. And he's not the first one this cycle where that seemingly has been true. And it is just a weird time with some of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a weird time with all of that. That's why, the last time that Georgia found itself in the midst of a weird recruiting cycle was in 2021. That was pandemic. That was no visits. That was all the strangeness of coronavirus. And Georgia's response was to recruit much closer to home in that cycle, and it really worked. Georgia built an elite class, a lot of that coming from in-state that particular year. I'd love to see Georgia draw a smaller circle for its recruiting focus right now. That means, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying I don't want you to recruit nationally. I'm not saying any of that. I mean, obviously, Georgia fans want Georgia to get the best players they can get regardless of where they're from. But I do think that it would behoove you to have some easy wins right now. I mean, when a guy like Evans from Texas wide receiver has been going to Oklahoma for a century. So when it all comes together, hey, whatever's happening behind the scenes, and lo and behold, last minute, okay, I'm just going to go to Oklahoma. Some of the things that kind of happen like that, I think it would behoove Georgia from time to time to have a little bit of a built-in advantage when it comes to some of these recruiting battles. Drew says, I like Stetton. I think that Georgia can win. I'm right there with you, Drew, and all that. Let's see what else. DT says, if you have to ask if you can read a comment, you can't. See, the problem is some of the comments, like the actual words being used, are not anything I can't say, but some of them sometimes seem to insinuate something that you never know. Brian Jones says, would you be happy with 300 yards passing, 150 yards rushing? I mean, yeah, I'd like to see Georgia rush for a little bit more than that. I just like to see Georgia. See, my thing is, I want to see Georgia rush for more yards per carry. I've said before, I'd like to see Georgia average 6 yards per rush. And however much you want to rush, it's fine. But just get yourself 6 yards per carry. Now, last year, nobody in the country averaged 6 yards per carry, I don't think. But we've seen like Clemson and Oklahoma, teams like that in recent years, they have found a way to average 6 yards per carry. I'd love to see Georgia get to that number. Love to do that. Let's see what else. Hemingway says, I'm wearing a black DawgNation polo today. He thinks I wear it just to taunt him. So this is actually the original DawgNation polo. This is the original DawgNation polo. Brooksy says, did I forget I was wearing a black shirt? I guess I sort of did. Yeah, for some reason, I haven't worn this on game day in a long time because it is old. It's a very old shirt. I pretty much wear the same thing to every game. It's like my red DawgNation shirt, my black pants. I pretty much wear that every game. It's also going to be probably 8 million degrees while outside the stadium on Saturday, so black may not go great with that. By the way, William Perry's in the comments section. I actually saw William on TV on Saturday. I was watching game day, and they were doing the thing on Georgia, and sure enough, there's William holding up his 0 days since Georgia's national championship. So I saw William on TV on Saturday. That was kind of fun. Hunker Down 93 says I'm taunting him even more by calling it the original DawgNation t-shirt or DawgNation shirt. It is the original. This was the first one we ever had. All right, let me go to Facebook here for a moment. Get some comments over there. And we got like 5 more minutes, and we're going to get off the air after that. All right. Daniel Aldrich says, pluck the Ducks. I like that. John Foster says, did y'all get Connor a UGA shirt this year? You know how those writers are. The writers are all like, they're very serious about their craft, and so they're going to be wearing like their regular clothes. Although I guess Mike will wear some DawgNation gear from time to time. Does Connor wear the DawgNation gear? I don't know. That's a good question. But listen, they got a job to do. The job that I do is very different from the job they do. So there you go. Ken Holcomb says, what do you think about LSU being a sleeper team? Kirk Herbstreit said that. I think there's a chance that's true. Now, here is the way I think about this. So let's say you got 7 teams in the SEC West. College football is a little bit of a zero-sum game. Good for somebody is bad for another. In other words, they can't all be bad. They can't all be good. So think about your sort of over-under projections where certain teams are slated to be. Bama's at around 11.5. A&M's around 8.5. Auburn's around 5.5. LSU's around 6.5, 7. Ole Miss is around that sort of 7.5 number. Mississippi State's around probably a similar number, maybe a little bit lower than that. Arkansas is at 7. So here's what you need to have. If you really want to try to have like the most accurate possible predictions, you need to have like 4 overs, 3 unders, or 3 overs, 4 unders. In other words, what's good for somebody else got to be bad for somebody else. And so what I'll tell you is I'm a little higher than some on Arkansas, and after Auburn named TJ Finley as its starter, I'm now probably really low on them. Auburn, I think, becomes the easy win for most teams in the SEC West. I'm not super high on Ole Miss. From a win-loss standpoint, probably not super high on Mississippi State, although game to game, including against Georgia, they could be dangerous. A&M, I don't think they're likely to figure out some of their offensive stuff, so all of a sudden that, to me, opens the door for LSU. I actually think that LSU is one of the most interesting teams in the SEC because here's the one thing once again, using sort of gambling stuff as a projection. When Notre Dame was favored by 10 or more points, under Brian Kelly, they won something like 40 straight games in that scenario. Now, not cover the spread, but just win the game. And you see the same thing for Notre Dame against unranked opponents, too. The point I'm getting to here is that while Brian Kelly was never going to win a national championship at Notre Dame because he couldn't beat elite teams, he just couldn't do it. Physically, they couldn't compete with truly elite teams. Against bad teams, against lesser teams, they almost never lost. And that speaks to me to Brian Kelly's ability as a coach. That Brian Kelly as a coach does not lose games to inferior opponents. And now with the LSU talent that he has available to him, they're going to be playing a lot of what I would think of as inferior opponents. I think that Kelly as a coach shows up in those games. And so all of a sudden now you start thinking about, well, does that mean they can win 8 or 9 games? Can they take one from A&M? That's a pretty big rivalry game. Can they take one from Lane Kiffin? How about Florida? That's a pretty fun matchup, cross-divisional type stuff. So I do kind of agree with Kirk Herbstreit on that. I do think that LSU is one of the more intriguing teams in the SEC West, and if I was going to make a wager on LSU, my bet would be over. I think it's 7s. It's either 6.5 or 7, but I see LSU as a team that can win 8 games this year. And if they win 8, they're beating somebody of note. They also play Tennessee, by the way. Tennessee goes to LSU, as a for instance right now. Sam Burke says, why are people still giving Bama a pass like Desmond Howard? Listen, Desmond Howard's got a lot more issues than whatever it was he said about Alabama. Did y'all see his playoff? He had A&M. I think he had A&M win the championship. He had Pitt in the playoff. Who else did he have? This was like the most random nonsense I've ever seen in my entire life. So whatever Desmond Howard said about Alabama pales in comparison to the just idiocy of what he said about the rest of his playoff picks. Bryce Dixon says, ready to see what our inside linebackers do. Bryce, I'm right there with you on that. Pretty important position for sure. Let's see what else. Roxanne Smith says, any chance we see Branson with the rock on Saturday? If I had to guess, yeah, I mean, we've seen Georgia give the ball to 4 backs in a game before, but I don't think that he gets significant carries in comparison to certainly what McIntosh is going to get, what Edwards is going to get, what Milton will get if healthy. So I would say your answer to does Robinson get carries, a lot of that may depend on how healthy Kendall Milton is. And we're 40 minutes away from finding out that from the Kirby Smart press conference. So I would say that Robinson's chance of getting carries depends on how healthy Milton is. And Kirby will give us an update, although I'm sure he'll speak cryptically one way or another. Robert Hosea says he's going to be at College Game Day in Columbus for the Ohio State Notre Dame game. That's cool. He says, I'm going to be in all UGA gear. Well, there you go. That's kind of cool. That's fun. Brandon Ray says, do you think we see a bunch of 2 tight end sets? You better believe it. And I think they'll even show you 3 tight end sets a pretty good bit. Bill Sanders says, I'm loving Desmond picking A&M to win the national championship. Yeah, for all y'all want to say about me being kind of a Jimbo lover here, the truth is I haven't made any of those kind of predictions about Texas A&M this year. I just haven't done that. James Crump said Herbstreit lost credibility with him picking Nebraska to play in the Big Ten title game. Yeah, that one does not look very good right now. It does not. It does not. Miriam Corbin, no fan of Desmond Howard. I mean, I think that no one's done less with the big platform that he's on than Desmond Howard. Like, Herbstreit's built himself a career by being on College Game Day. Pollock, I think, is doing some version of the same thing. I don't know that Desmond Howard has done quite as much with that platform there. I think of him as kind of the weak link from that group. I mean, obviously now, Corso's gotten older, but I just don't see Desmond. I don't know. I don't see him putting his stamp on the show the way that other analysts do. I don't. In fact, I think there's a lot of. I could potentially see a lot of analysts doing better on game day than Desmond Howard does. Now, that's not just because you don't like his opinions, because, I mean, a lot of people have crazy opinions, but I think there are a lot of people who just seem to like the sport better than Desmond does. Let's see what else. Also, let me just say this real quick. I saw where Pollock got a lot of heat from some Georgia fans because he didn't pick UGA to make the playoff. Yeah, that's such a thankless job to be in. I mean, if you don't think that David Pollock loves UGA, I mean, how many times has he done like the, Saturday in Athens video or, whatever else? I mean, of course Pollock's a UGA guy. Of course he is. But he's also, doing a job on television. And on that job, he's got to be more than just the UGA dude. I'm not saying he's intentionally not picking UGA. I'm saying it's like you're sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's part of the reason why you'll hear me make a lot of predictions, but I haven't made any kind of like season-ending prediction for Georgia because it's just like, I don't know. It's just, after a while, it gets to be not very much fun. I've certainly picked Georgia to shut out Oregon, but you'll notice a lot of times we don't pick we think Georgia's going to go 15-0 win the national championship, because, I mean, obviously that's what we hope happens. But if we don't think that's going to happen, it doesn't do us very much good to come on here and say that, because that's not what really people want to hear. And ultimately, just kind of one of those things that who knows how any of this plays out. But the point is like, I thought that the grief that Pollock got for not picking Georgia to make the playoff was greatly overstated. Pollock is as Georgia through and through as it gets. I mean, trust me, I have stood on the sideline with him during games. There is no denying where David Pollock went to school and where David Pollock's heart lies. But on TV, you're just sort of doing a different job. And that's just kind of the way that goes. Ken Holcomb, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate that. Glad you enjoyed yourself. That's awesome to hear. Fred Gunn also points out that Pollock did pick Georgia to win the national championship last year. In fact, he picked it perfectly. He had Georgia losing the first time, winning the second time. So he nailed that. That's a good point. By the way, that gets me thinking. Has anybody of any note picked Georgia to win the national championship this year? Last year, we brought Peter Burns on the show because he was one of the few guys who had done that. Has anybody this year picked Georgia to win the national championship? I don't mean like, so-and-so on the internet. I mean like a person of note. Has that happened for anybody yet? I'm not quite sure about that. But if it has, I'd love for you to tell me about it. Let's see what else. All right, last ones. We got to get ready to go. Jeremy Little says Kirby hates alternate uniforms. I don't know that he hates them. I just don't think he cares about them. I just don't think that rises to the level of being worth his attention. But I'm not quite so sure that he should be the one picking the uniforms anyway, right? So, I'm not anti-alternate uniforms. I wouldn't care if Georgia wore black on Saturday. I think it'd be kind of fun. It's inside. The air conditioning's going to be on. So, you're not really putting yourself at a heat disadvantage in a game like that. But I just don't think that Kirby spends a lot of time thinking about that kind of stuff. By the way, great to see Christian here there as well. Chase White says, will I be able to watch the game on my cruise? Yes, you will. But hit me up, Chase, with your specific details. We'll talk about, all your options available there on that. But hit me up. I'd love to hear more about your cruise situation. So talk to me and we'll do that. Heath Williams. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt Corso's getting older, right? And, you talk about, is it Lee Fitting? Is that the producer's name? They've made no apologies in the past. They like Lee being on television, even though he's obviously showing his age a little bit more because he is such an icon as a part of the broadcast, and they do it with great respect. I mean, no one's pretending that Lee is what he once was related to that, but there is a certain comfort that people have with seeing this face continue to be a part of the broadcast. But there's no denying that Lee is not what he once was. I don't think that ESPN's trying to pretend that he is. Let's see what else. Scott Harris, the Bama fans asking where their ring go. Yeah, that's really pretty funny. I did see that, and that's very good. Jay Shipes, another comment that I can't read. And then at DawgNation.com, and then we're done. Hemingway says Georgia's got a good chance to go 12-0. Totally agree. We'll see what happens come December, but that's definitely the case. Cam Hasty points out a good thing. David Pollock was a part of the video they did to bring back the block numbers. So that tells you everything you need to know about his involvement at UGA. Brooksy on Kirk Herbstreit. Herbstreit's also been really pro-UGA at times over the years. So, you can't call Herbstreit a UGA hater. 2018, I mean, he was the one arguing for Georgia to make the playoff when it didn't make it that year, but he was arguing louder than anybody for Georgia to make it. All right, good stuff. We got to go. Thanks for being here. R.S. Andrews Cool Down. Y'all find R.S. Andrews online for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. They show up on time. They'll do the work that's promised, the price is promised. Check out R.S. Andrews on that, including getting your air conditioning unit tuned back up to factory fresh specs. Find them online, rsandrews.com. Also, check out the Atlanta Journal-Constitution online, ajc.com. Obviously, aftermath of a busy weekend for high school football and rough weekend for the Braves in St. Louis and all kinds of stuff. You can check all of that out. Also, the Tour Championship. How about Rory McIlroy? Clutch performance from him, winning himself a bunch of money. I believe more money than anyone's ever won on any round of golf, at least on the record. So you can find out more about that, AJC.com there as well. Falcons making roster moves in the aftermath of the Braves' tough weekend against the Cards. So AJC.com for a lot more on that. Y'all have a great weekend, or if only. Y'all have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Dog Nation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We'll look forward to talking to you then.